Welcome to the Restoring Balance podcast, where two lifelong friends get together to rewatch and discuss why they love Avatar: The Last Airbender. I'm Mike.
And I'm Jim. Today, we're discussing Book 1, Episode 4, The Warriors of Kyoshi.
This episode starts off really well. I knew that the tone was going to be learning lessons. We really dove deep into Sokka's sexism right from the jump on Appa. We're just talking about the sewing and the fighting. It's right at the beginning.
Aang lands on Kyoshi Island. Sokka and the gang are captured by female warriors, thus setting up part of Sokka's arc for the episode, which is coming to terms with the fact that women can fight sometimes too.
Wait a second, there's no way a bunch of girls took us down.
A bunch of girls, huh? The Unagi's gonna eat well tonight.
Prior to that, though, Aang's riding the elephant koi. Honestly, I was watching him ride the fish, and they looked like they wanted to be ridden.
They were making it easy for him.
Right. Like, they got there, and we couldn't see anybody flapping around in there. And then as soon as Aang goes out there to ride the fish, we have a whole party. Everybody's jumping around, swimming in lines.
Maybe they were happy to see their old friend reincarnated. Maybe Kyoshi used to ride. It doesn't seem like what she would do. She doesn't seem like the type. In this very episode, there's some big exaggeration.
She definitely doesn't seem like the type.
And then we're introduced to the Unagi when it eats one of the koi and scares Aang back to the land.
Mm-hmm. With that quality animation.
The animation of him running is insane. But his act of running is like awesome. Running on the water, running so fast. A few times throughout the show, Aang like sprints really fast. It's such a sick ability. Like, he should use it a little more. The problem is he's got to wait for everybody else to walk around.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure it's really tiring, but it's a great ability. It doesn't take me out of the narrative, and I don't blame them for doing it. But one thing I just noticed, not a big deal, just, yeah, people obviously have like superhuman ability when fighting. Like, they can jump really far, they get thrown through things and are not hurt at all, which is normal in cartoons and stuff. But at the end, when they're flying away, Aang dives back into the water and rides the Unagi successfully, gains complete control over this humongous monster, this Godzilla-like creature, and then forces him to put out all the fires in town instantly. And it's like, if we're not even going to talk about the fact that how could he possibly command that thing's head by just pulling on his whiskers, just the simple fact that he dove into the water and it was immediately there. It's a little too convenient. And I don't like it when things get too convenient like that because it makes it harder to believe.
Makes sense considering what was set up before and wraps up the episode nicely, but it's just a little too quick.
Yeah, a little too fast. But he could have accomplished the same thing by going into the Avatar state and controlling the water.
I'd much rather them take this too fast than to take the arcs that were set up and fleshed out during the episode. Like, if they took less time out of that, then
yeah,
I would
where
not
they
be having as much fun, you know?
Yeah, I appreciate they focused on Sokka. Well, there's actually focus on everyone. I think they balanced it really well because there was the narrative of Sokka realizing girls are people too, I guess you could say. And then Aang wanting to impress Katara and then trying to make her jealous with all the other girls.
That was one thing about this episode for Aang, is that he can't let this Avatar stuff go to his head, but Aang plays such an important role in the state of the world that no matter where he goes, whether he's in a place that supports his role in the world or is trying to remove him, it's going to bring all this attention. And he hasn't operated in this war at all yet. You know, up to this point, he's gotten a little bit of experience, but it definitely makes it clear for him and the viewer that, you know, wherever he goes, this war is going to follow, and he has to think about that if he's going to spend a significant amount of time anywhere.
Yeah, it's kind of a bittersweet episode because with the subplot of making Katara jealous and Aang sort of reveling in the appreciation of the people for being Avatar, they spend too much time there. And from the very beginning, Katara warns him that they have to leave. She's gathering supplies, but Aang doesn't want to go.
I told you we have to leave Kyoshi soon.
I don't want to leave Kyoshi yet. I can't put my finger on it, but there's something I really like about this place.
And then he has a bitter pill to swallow at the end when he realizes that the fact that he stayed to enjoy that attention may cost the lives of the very people that were admiring him, and definitely destroyed a bunch of their houses.
Yep.
So it is a...
And you saw his face when he realized that.
Yeah, when he blasted Zuko through the wall of that house, his face immediately fell as he realized that it was his fault. Zuko was there. It was his fault that the houses were burning.
Great shot of his face just falling. And they didn't tell us. You know, that's a great example of show don't tell right there. It was one of the first times, or if not the first time, that we've seen him, Aang, take an offensive approach here. Usually he's evading and dodging and doing his best to get out of the situation pretty quickly. But this time he confronted Zuko and said, "Over here," you know, and went after him.
Yeah, he was probably feeling the pressure because everyone was being attacked. He was still non-lethal, though. All he did was blast him away, and then they ran away.
Did the quick wrap up at the end, as you were talking about. I like that did happen still, although it was quick, because he realizes what he's brought to this place, and he wants to fix it. And with the many apologies that we're witnessing throughout this episode, yes, it's one thing to apologize, and genuinely, too, as we witness, but it's another to apologize and then work towards fixing it immediately and getting back in the water and spraying the town with the unagi is a great example of that. You see that you've made a mistake and you fixed it.
Just like Sokka.
Absolutely.
After he's beaten again, when he goes to sort of make fun of the Kyoshi Warriors when they're training, comes back later in the day and drops down. Is that called prostrating yourself? He prostrates himself. Or at the very least, he bows, and he apologizes for being sexist, basically.
I would be honored if you would teach me.
Even if I'm a girl?
I'm sorry if I insulted you earlier. I was wrong.
And he does a good job. The voice acting makes it so believable. And my man gets absolutely torn up for it when he has to put that costume on.
He deserves it. It's like, when you do it, it's like, you got to pay a little bit to get a little bit.
Yep, exactly. What goes around comes around.
Definitely got to wear a dress to get a lesson in fighting.
Thinking about these apologies too, I do remember when I was in elementary school, I had several like pretty clear memories of just choosing to tell the truth. I watched a lot of shows with superheroes and, you know, all this kind of stuff. One distinct memory, when I was in 3rd grade, I had a phone, a little folded phone that had the game Snake on it. But when you got to like certain thresholds of the length of your snake, the phone would like make a noise. And I was playing that game on this phone that didn't even have service, by the way. It was like, all I could do was play Snake on it.
Wait, you couldn't use it as a phone?
No. It was just like my dad's old phone that didn't have...
So just like a gadget for you to mess around with, huh?
Literally. So I'm playing Snake in class in like 3rd grade. Phone makes this noise and disrupts the whole class. Teacher turns around from writing something on the board and doesn't even ask like what that was or anything. I'm just like, that was me. I apologize. And looking back on it, I'm like, why are you trying so hard to accept this responsibility right now? But it was that moment and several others around the same time in my life where I was just like, I mean, nothing bad has ever come from this. I started to learn that the truth is just always a winner.
If you tell the truth, you don't have to live with the guilt of lying.
Thanks, Avatar. Showing me that lesson pretty early on. No, I'm not going to blame this episode entirely, but maybe I'll give Iroh some of that credit later on. The show takes these realistic approaches that these characters are taking and demonstrates them in such a way that it feels like you can do this whether you're in a world where this bending magic exists or you're in.
Yeah, because that's something you have found very useful in your life is learning from all the media you watch, like looking at the most noble, the most caring people in all these shows and just modeling their behavior, trying to improve yourself in that way, which was something I don't do enough of because I basically forget everything I watch.
Yeah. Yep. A lot of reminding Mike about something he's seen before or a lesson he's already learned when it comes to this media stuff.
I learned different kind of lessons.
Right, exactly.
I learned facts.
Yep. And you do remember those. I'll give you that. That's why it works out between us so well. I get to remind you of these lessons. You get to remind me of the facts. We keep everything in line.
It is a true yin-yang. I just can't believe Sokka's character. He must have been raised well, because you get humiliated twice. His instinct is to come back later, apologize, and ask for help. Like, I would not show my face there again. I mean, hopefully I would learn the lesson and be like, well, that was wrong of me. But I'd be like, oof, can't show my face there.
Well, think about if you're on the other side, right? You're Suki and this group of warriors who stand for bravery and honor. So if you have this wannabe warrior come back and say what Sokka said, you got to think that the Kyoshi Warriors would at least give him a chance.
Yeah, if they truly lived up to their creed,
Right.
That makes sense. I don't know, I just relate it to real life. Nobody has time for that. Like, everything you sign up, you pre-committed, got to do, like, at least in my life, things don't just happen like that. Maybe because I'm not going out of my way.
Yeah, could be. You never know.
Yeah. I thought it was kind of rude. He just kept interrupting their class.
Definitely came in swinging with the dance lesson and
Yeah, like during their practice. It's insane.
yeah.
Sorry, ladies, didn't mean to interrupt your dance lesson. I was just looking for somewhere to get a little workout.
Well, you're in the right place.
I'm glad that he turned it around so quickly. At first, too, when he came in like that, like Suki apologized.
Yeah, because he was with the Avatar.
Right.
And I was like, Sokka, really? You're going to be...
And then he kept going.
You're really going to denigrate them still?
Right. It's like, we could have been fine.
When he first walks in, she baits him into, like, doing a demonstration, right? But the thing is, he places her there. He takes a step back and he says, try to block this. And then he goes to just punch her in the face. What was he going to do?
Yeah.
Was he just going to punch her in the face? Because he would look like he was swinging normally. She stopped him, of course, but he was just winding up to get her.
That, to me, does a good job of showing us his lack of experience.
Yeah.
You know, like you mentioned, he was raised well. And I absolutely agree. He was not trained well yet.
Yeah, not in fighting.
Right.
Oh, and he says, I'm the best warrior in my village, which isn't even true. Does he not consider his family who are out on patrol or the warpath to be in his village? Like, aren't they all better than him?
He sure does not include them.
Pretty deceptive.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. The only other people are toddlers.
How about Momo during this episode?
This was half a Momo episode, I think.
You think
this
so?
might be the greatest Momo episode. Momo's the best.
You gotta kind of look for him, but my man is having himself a time.
The writers were overworking that dude. He was in like every other shot doing some crazy shenanigans, stealing pastries, sleeping on account of the pastries, putting him in a food coma, hanging from rafters, watching the characters, screaming for Aang to get out of the water, hanging with the girls. Like, he was doing everything.
He sure was. When Aang was hanging with the girls too, the push-ups, every time I watch this episode, when he's doing the push-ups, then the one hand and then the no hand, every time he goes in for the next one, like he does his first no hand push-up, the next one, he's just blown up all this dust and dirt, and he has to inhale to blow again for the next push-up. And every time I'm like, you have nothing but dirt and dust in your lungs now.
Breaks your immersion. Not real.
Oh man, I'm just picturing myself doing what he's doing, and I'm like, I'm done in the lung department.
I love how they use bending in ways that feel natural, like as if the world is real. Like, that makes sense for Aang to do those, but I wouldn't think of that. You know what I mean?
It makes it feel, as if the writers spent some time living in this world.
They probably did in their mind. Like, wonder how many hours they spent thinking. It's got to be hundreds.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Where are all... So they got the Kyoshi Warriors, presumably in order of female warriors, because Kyoshi was a girl avatar, and then she like trained them up to be strong.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing was, Avatar Kyoshi was an earthbender.
Mm-hmm.
So how come the Kyoshi Warriors aren't earthbenders? Where are all the earthbenders? Like, that's really good to defend your people. And it's the Fire Nation took them? Is that what happened?
I mean, I don't have a concrete answer for you.
Well,
but that would make sense.
remember Suki? Oh, it's Haru and his father,
Mm-hmm.
and their families are captured because they're earthbenders. But then Suki also ends up in prison, unrelated.
Yeah.
Well, related, but not related to the fact that she's not an earthbender.
Right.
Yeah, it's strange that they have this fighting force, but no earthbenders. Because that would have been helpful in fighting Zuko.
Sure would have.
They took out all of his smaller warriors pretty easily. Like, they're skilled. But then Zuko came out with his princely training and then did a breakdance for them all.
Yep. Gotta love that breakdance.
I didn't realize he broke danced so much.
That's his thing, for sure.
He breakdanced so much.
I think they use it just enough for you to forget, but then remember when he does it again.
We had the first sighting of
Foaming Mouth Guy.
Yeah.
Another great joke that didn't need to be what it is, but it is. Just like the cabbage, man.
That's true.
Just that makes me feel like the team was a good team that was making this, Like, it makes me think they had a fun time back there, and that might even be what brought on such great ideas to make this world feel so lived in.
Zuko's candles growing and shrinking based off his breathing.
Yeah.
The little things.
The Unagi really could just shoot water, huh?
That was sick. It could breathe water, yeah. Or water breathing.
And Aang really just went right back in there. After everything that happened in the first part of this episode, just goes back in. Like, I'm terrified.
He locked in.
I would never go back in that water.
Oh, you're referring he just wades out when he's with the girls. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, when he goes to show off to the younger girls. But yeah, think about it. At the beginning of this episode, Aang rides the elephant koi. All those fish, we even see him kind of getting like eaten and pulled back.
Yeah, Koi is devoured.
Right.
By the Unagi.
Then we get Aang swimming in this water with these giant, spiky, spinal fins just stalking him. He barely makes it out alive. We go to later in the episode and he's like, yeah, I'm going to go back in just to show off. And I just can't believe we're ever entering that body of water again.
And he had the express intent to ride the Unagi itself. After almost dying from it. Like, that's why he went. It's not like he was like, girls, watch me ride the koi, it'll be cool. He's like, come watch me ride the monster of your lake.
Right. Speaking of the monster of the lake, too, this serpent is different from the one that's in the Serpent's Pass, but the one in the Serpent's Pass does show back up later in the series.
Yeah, it does. This one doesn't, though, does it? Unagi is forgotten. I'm too greedy with the animals. Even though we literally get multiple animals per episode, and I want more. I want more crazy, weird animals.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the rhinos already.
The Unagi is just so sick.
Mm-hmm.
It's gigantic.
You used to have like old like sea monster dragon books as a kid that we would just look through to see the cool pictures and try and draw them and stuff.
The feeling of unexplored territory with unknown creatures is one of the best ones. Just trying to imagine what it was like when all the mystery was left in the world. I still think there's a lot of mystery in the world, but we've discovered a lot of the animals. And we don't really get to see them in our daily lives, you know? But hey, we could go to the Amazon and find some animals. Under the sea, tons of animals we don't know about.
Just ride them real quick.
Well, ride a giant squid, ride a whale. We got whales, which brings me back to my point. Where are all the whales in Avatar?
Can't think of any whales.
There could have been a great whale-based culture in the South Pole. Like there could have been whale bones for like decoration or medicine or something. Could have been a lot of things.
Yeah. For anybody listening, Mike's a big fan of killer whales as well.
They're terrifying.
Absolutely terrifying.
Imagine getting into the freezing cold, like Arctic Ocean, and then just a black and white behemoth speeds towards you at like 50 miles per hour and just rips you in half. That's crazy.
I don't think I want to imagine that.
Oh, you don't actually don't want to imagine that? That's my bad.
Not for me personally, actually.
They bully great white sharks.
Yeah, for fun.
And they're like dozens of times smarter. I had a difficulty picking what number because I actually don't know how much smarter on like a quantitative level they are, but they're a lot smarter.
Yep. Mike knows way too much about those animals.
It's good that there's no killer whales in Avatar. Would have just eaten them. Would have been over. I like how they keep hinting at Katara improving her skills over time, because eventually she starts doing crazy things, and it makes it way more believable. A lot of times in shows, they don't build these things over time. They just, I don't know, what they just assume we don't care or it's not necessary, and then people start to whip out crazy abilities. First of all, there's no realism behind the fact that the characters have these abilities, and second of all, we can't relate to the struggle of the characters where they have to practice and struggle and suffer in order to get better, you know, and that's what life's kind of all about.
Yep.
But I really appreciate they have in this one episode, they've got multiple things just hinting at her improving. She's practicing with the bowl of water when Aang tries to tempt her into come watching him ride the Unagi. And then when she comes down to check on him, she saves his life. 2 times, actually. So Aang gets thrown by the Unagi, is stunned in the water, and she swims out, and the Unagi dives down to eat Aang, and she like blasts the water out in front of her and launches her and Aang onto the shore with the help of the wave that the Unagi creates by slamming into the water. And so that's her like getting better mastery of her water bending. And then on the shore, Aang is not responding to her, and she gets the water out of his lungs, I would assume, with a little bit of water bending, further showing her development. And it's like, she doesn't even fight with water bending in this episode, but we still get to see her developing.
That particular scene when she bends the water from his lungs, it reminds me of like later on in season 2 during Bitter Work when Sokka is stuck in the ground. Aang just learns how to earthbend, and he's ready to try and get Sokka out. But then Toph is like, you don't want to accidentally crush him.
Yeah.
And here, Katara is still not very skilled at waterbending yet, but she, without hesitation, just bends the water in this man's body.
Yeah.
You know, it just makes you wonder, like, how do we do that so easily, you know?
Yeah.
Because Toph is definitely right. Like, you don't want to crush.
The only difference I would really see is that it's like life or death. Aang's not breathing on the ground, so she has to try. Whereas Aang could wait for Toph to get back. But yeah, she did it like immediately.
True.
But I don't think it was worth harping on that point for the writers.
I think to your point about her development, I think once we get to the end of this season, her development really starts to pick up. She apparently learns way faster than Aang when they meet with Master Pakku, and is now a waterbending master, and Aang has to learn from her. You know, when they were about the same.
She's a water prodigy. I'd like to take this time to comment on some of the storytelling they did in the episode.
Is that what you'd like to do?
I really would.
All right, Mike, what do you got?
Well, one scene in particular I thought was really cool. It's how the news of the Avatar got to Zuko.
Mm-hmm.
So the gang arrives in Kyoshi, and then an excited girl tells a fisherman that the Avatar's in Kyoshi. The same fisherman goes to the market, giving his fish away, and then the shopkeeper hears the news. One of the members of Zuko's crew then buys a fish from the market, hearing the news, and then Zuko is served the steamed fish with Iroh, and they learn of Aang's presence on Kyoshi. And I just thought that was really cool, the modeling sort of how gossip actually travels in real life, but then the repetition of the information being passed between people, which is viscerally shown in the fish itself. Like the fish changes hands and the information changes minds.
I think it was very well presented in terms of the transitions as well. They were all from the same perspective, left to right, just going across in a linear fashion.
Yeah, I wonder what that's called. It reminds me of like a match cut where like different objects keep like the same path or matched up on screen between cuts, but it's the repetition of the same action is what it is. And so I'm sure that has a term.
Yeah, I like it. I don't know what the term is, but I certainly did like it. It was a great idea.
Thanks everyone for listening to the 4th episode of the Restoring Balance podcast. And don't forget, the most logical thing to do after encountering a sea monster in a lake is to try to ride it.
And next time you want to learn something about yourself, try getting ambushed by a bunch of girls.
See you next time.
Peace.